Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here. This is a long day for you already. We've been popping in and out, heading to votes. You've been trapped in the chair for a while going through this, so I appreciate your engagement. Let me do the unusual thing between the two of us to give you some compliments at the beginning. Can I do that?
Absolutely.
Your team at CMS and their work on DIR fees is something that I have pushed for a long time on this. I am pleased to be able to see that there's actual work going on with CMS in the DIR fees. That's a very big issue, especially for rural pharmacies. Continue to be able to do the work. There are a lot of people that are counting on access to rural pharmacies and other pharmacies based on that work. Just don't allow entities out there to be able to water everything down with what actually needs to be done. Keep going all the way through. Second thing I would say to you is you and I had a banter back and forth about birthing persons last year in your budget. Your budget doesn't use the term birthing persons this year. You use the term mothers. Thank you. You have pregnant people in there as well. That's close enough on it. So I appreciate just the terminology on being able to use that as well. Let me talk through a couple of things on this that I do want to be able to get in on. Switching over, the questions for the record and the responses from your team have been exceptionally slow or non-responsive entirely. I'm not trying to be difficult in some of the questions, but when you were before us last summer, it took all the way until February to be able to get an answer, and when we got the answers, they were non-answers. When we've asked some other questions to be able to follow up earlier this January, we got a non-answer back in March. We've got to be able to get dialogue. So even if you and I just get time on the phone to be able to get answers, we've got to be able to work through answers and try to be able to figure this out. You've been in the House of Representatives. You know what that's like. You want to actually get answers to questions and try to figure out which direction the administration is going. So my first question is really just assurances. Can we find a process that we can actually get answers to questions?
Senator, I hope I can give you an answer that says you're going to get what you need. And why don't we do this? I'll make sure I give you my cell number before this hearing is over, so you can call me directly. But we've gotten questions where we've had binders full to answer. It's tough when you get over 400 questions asked, more than 500 different briefings that you have to provide. But having served as a member, sitting where you are, absolutely, we want to be responsive.
Okay, I'll be judicious with that, but let's find a way to be able to just get answers to questions, because we're looking for directional issues. Following up with what Senator Daines was talking about with Title 42, this has been used as an immigration policy piece. For instance, the administration came in and changed Title 42 and said if you're coming in with a young child, then Title 42 doesn't apply to you anymore. There is no more pandemic for you. So there are some things that have actually worked it as an immigration policy. I think our biggest issue is at the same time, there's a request from the administration saying we need $10 billion more because of the pandemic. There's also a decision to say the pandemic's over and the risk is over the border, and there's not even a requirement for individuals crossing the border to get a vaccine when they cross. It's made available to them, but not a requirement to be able to do that. I think that's the biggest issue that we're seeing from everybody.
And I won't try to give you a full response, but I'll simply say with regard to children, the reason there was an exception made to children, and by the way, that's been questioned by some courts, is because a child, if not allowed to come in, we have no idea what will end up happening to that child.
Right. These were even family units, though, coming with small children. So it wasn't just a child that was an unaccompanied minor. These were family units of any size that if they had a 4-year-old with them, then they were all allowed to come in. We can follow up on that. I've got 10,000 questions I want to go through. One of the entities in my state had done testing for an at-home antigen COVID test, which they had great responses from in their labs and had a really positive piece. I want to fill you in on what happened on the FDA side on this, though, and the frustration that they've had. They had a very difficult time hearing back from their reviewers. The lead reviewer that they had went on leave for a while, and no one else was assigned to their case, so they had an extended period of time where they got no responses at all. When they start getting responses back, they're asked to be able to send information in by email, but the email servers kick it back and say it's too large, and there was no way to actually be able to submit it online as well to be able to do it. When they finally do get an answer just this past week, after all this long process they've gone through for months, this was the answer they got back. FDA has determined that further review of your EUA request is not a priority. FDA therefore declines to issue an EUA for the product at this time. Here's the concern. The sense is for these at-home antigen tests that are coming out dealing with COVID, that it seems to be the larger companies are getting through the process and the smaller companies are getting this response. This request is not a priority at this time. Tell me that's not so, and how do we able to document that the larger companies aren't navigating the system and the smaller companies are getting from the FDA, you're not a priority?
Senator, thanks for the question. Let me first say that if you wish, we can try to follow up on that particular company and find out where things went. But what I will tell you is when you're dealing with volume in the tens of millions, we do look for those manufacturers that can't produce quickly because those tests are needed now. And so we do try to reach out to those who can give us the volume that we need.
Right. But then again, the manufacturing is not necessarily the company that actually created it. And so that becomes the challenge here. If you've got a really good product on it, wherever it's coming from, how do you turn that around? If you get 100 smaller units that are able to accomplish it, that may be the same as getting one larger one. So we're again back to the biggest companies getting the preference and smaller companies that may have a good product saying you're just not a priority.
Scale and efficiency, we'll work with you on that because we want any, especially a domestic manufacturer or provider, to be able to get that out there.
I will have several questions for the record that I'll follow up on. We'll be judicious on how many we give you, understanding you've got several, but there are some issues on gender dysphoria and other issues that are coming up that some decisions are being made that we want to know how that's being made and what's the science behind it, how you're tracking it.
Look forward to getting those.
Thank you.